An innocent joke cost me my relationship. My desperate attempt to win her back and ruined my life. They went camping in the woods, and I surreptitiously accompanied them. While they were sitting around a campfire at night, I rustled bushes and created noise to scare them. My girlfriend is very afraid of things like this, so I thought it would be a great way to boost her excitement, hoping that seeing me would make the camping trip even more enjoyable. The prank eventually escalated. I made so much noise that the entire family were convinced that something frightening was lurking around. In a state of terror, her uncle approached me with a firearm, mistaking me for a wild animal. So I had no choice except to reveal myself and terminate it. This seemed like a harmless prank to me, but my girlfriend believed otherwise. In the days that followed, she was unusually quiet and never returned any of my calls because she wanted to enjoy the camping vacation and distract herself from what I was doing. When I eventually heard back from her, she was enraged, telling me that I should know how much things like that bother her and that I should know better. We went back and forth for a long since I thought she was overreacting. She eventually told me that either I went to her house and apologized to everyone involved, or we were done. I realized I needed to swallow my pride and go over. However, after some thought, I felt that an apology was unnecessary. I'd done nothing wrong and was determined to come over to her house and explain to everyone that I still believe what I did was innocent because it had no real effects. While walking over to the house, I had another thought. Things would be okay if I simply offered them the largest false apologies ever. All I had to do was sit there and apologize, and everything would return to normal once they believed my stories. Plus, I suppose what I did could be regarded as not innocuous, so if I just tried to see things from their perspective, the apology might be much easier to deliver. So that is what I did. My girlfriend's family was having a barbecue in their backyard and she was waiting for me to come over and apologize for the prank I played on all of them. At around 9 p.m., I arrived in their backyard. Everyone that I pranked at the campsite was seated at a table. Everyone was plainly waiting for me to arrive. I sat next to my girlfriend and began my apologies, which was already well rehearsed in my head. All I had to do was add some emotion to it by seeming very remorseful. I admitted that my prank was ill-timed, immature, and foolish, and I apologized for ruining their camping trip, which they had obviously planned for quite some time. I tried to be as honest and truthful as possible, and after I was finished, I waited for a response, perhaps an acceptance or forgiveness, just to recognize that everything was well. There was a lengthy, awkward stillness as the entire family simply stared at me. The uncle then whispered something into the father's ear and they both burst out laughing. I couldn't understand what he said. The father then told me that he did not accept my apology and asked me to leave. My initial answer was a loud, "What the F***," which exacerbated the situation. My girlfriend's father constantly telling me to leave. I grew quite angry. I thought to myself, this is what happens when I fabricate an apology, and I should have just been honest with them and told them exactly what I thought. When my father urged me to go out one more time, I lost my cool, swiped an empty plastic cup from the table and told the family, "Fine, all of you," while flipping them off with both middle fingers. I started heading out, and as I was leaving the backyard, my girlfriend came up with me and announced that she was breaking up with me. She told me I was too immature and impetuous, and she asked me to leave her and her family alone. I tried to apologize profusely to her for this, claiming that I simply lost my patience. I went on to say, "Babe, I'm sorry, just give me another chance, I promise." I kept stating this, but she said she had given me millions of opportunities and couldn't fix me. She then went away, and I did something that made matters worse. I yelled at her, calling her a B******, before kicking and pounding the wooden fence that separates their front and garden. I took down a portion of the fence and then departed. The reason for all of this is that I struggle with rage. I am diagnosed with intermittent explosive disorder. Sometimes I just explode, and it's exceedingly difficult, if not impossible, to control my actions or words. My girlfriend was the only one who embraced me for who I was, therefore the fact that she ended our relationship affected me deeply. For the next 3 weeks, I couldn't stop thinking about her. I could scarcely eat, sleep, or do anything that used to bring me joy. To cheer myself up, I bought tickets to my favorite team's game, but I spent the entire game thinking about my ex and how she ended our relationship. I drank a lot and ate like garbage, which caused me to acquire some weight. All I did was think about how to get her back. To be honest, I intended to surprise her and win her back by impressing her entire family. It took me a while to decide what I wanted to do, but once I did, I thought it was a pretty cute idea. I dressed up in the suit I wore on our first date, which I used to win her over, got a radio, and walked over to my girlfriend's house at night with the purpose of playing a song loud enough for her to hear. We live in the same neighborhood, and there's a shortcut through a little patch of woods that I use from my house to hers, which is the route I traveled last night. I climbed over the fence into her backyard and stood on the grass, holding up the stereo and playing the song I had meant, "Buckcherry Sorry." Unfortunately, there was a problem. The stereo was an ancient piece of garbage that I dragged up from my cellar, and the volume was quite low. It seemed muffled, and I didn't want to move closer to their house in case the parents saw me. But I did not want to give up. I wanted something to come from the night, so I put down the stereo and looked through the window that went to my girlfriend's room. My girlfriend was simply playing with her phone on her bed. I glanced into her room for a moment, enjoying how lovely she appeared. Not in a weird sense, she's just very attractive. I guess I got caught up in staring at her because I hadn't seen her in a few weeks, and I didn't know I'd been peering in there for quite some time. I went to go, but I noticed one of her neighbors on their porch, looking directly at me while on their phone. My first assumption was that they were probably contacting the police. I panicked and did something very stupid. I tried to get into my girlfriend's house by yanking on the rear screen door, but her mother noticed me and shouted, it. I then hurried back into the woods, leaving the stereo in their backyard. The worst part of it all was that the next morning, my girlfriend called and left a message on my phone. She stated that she is aware that I was at her house and that she is only issuing me one final warning before speaking with the police about harassment charges and a restraining order. She stated she would never get back together with me and encouraged me to move on. Apparently, what I did was highly strange and inappropriate. What's worse is that the neighbor videoed me for a few minutes and sent it to her. My ex informed me that she now has numerous sources, including footage and eyewitness statements, of me being creepy to her entire family, and that if I know what's best for me, I'll leave her and her family alone. What made things worse was that I received a note from her father. He texted me a picture of the stereo, which was obviously smashed. The text stated that he had shattered the radio and that if I returned to the house, he would break more than just the stereo with a baseball bat. This was a serious threat of assault, so I genuinely considered the appropriate legal response. Anyway, I spent the following several weeks thinking about how I could potentially get back together with my ex-girlfriend because I'm confident that if she just gives me one more chance, she will fall in love with me. Unfortunately, I've decided to just move on. She never wants to talk to me again, and I've already caused enough problems with her family. Overall, I've caused her significant pain, which is difficult to admit. I sincerely tried to get over her and leave her and her family alone, but circumstances prevented me from doing so. After a few weeks, I had reduced my alcohol consumption, but then Halloween rolled along. While my parents and hers were at a Halloween party, I went around the neighborhood trick-or-treating with my tiny cousin. We went about our neighborhood for a time, eventually arriving on the same block as my ex-girlfriend's house. I knew we'd have to pass her house eventually, but I wasn't concerned. I figured her father would not even be out to see us, and all I was doing was trick-or-treating. We ended up walking by her house, and both of her parents were sitting in their garage with a bowl of candy to hand out. I attempted to grab my cousin and run in the opposite direction, but it was too late. I heard my ex's father exclaim, "I see you," and he recognized me. I just grabbed my cousin and we returned to my house without looking back at my ex's place. We drove home, but about an hour later, the cops arrived and informed me that my ex's father wants to prosecute me with stalking and harassment. As I awaited my court date, I thought, this is all BS. I had no preconceived plans to go near their residence, nor did I have any intentions with their belonging. I was merely trick-or-treating with my cousin when we came upon their home. Well, fate had a rather unexpected twist. A few days after Halloween, my ex texted me while clearly intoxicated. Many of her texts were nonsensical or had horrible grammar, but I understood what she was saying. Basically, she was relishing the fact that I had charges filed against me, saying things like, "I hope you rot in jail, and lock him up." I replied with texts of my own. I called her names like B*********, but she didn't seem concerned. Simply sending her unpleasant text was insufficient for me. I honestly believe she has the nerve to kick me when I'm down, when all she has to do is stand on the sidelines while daddy does all the work. I've spent the entire day thinking about how I can get back at her for this. Part of me believes I should just wait until I'm done going to court, but I also want to respond while the situation is still fresh. I'm thinking of one last trick. What shall I do? Update. I'm leaving for 8 years. I was really drunk one night and, while looking at images of us, determined that the one last prank I would play on her would be to break in and enter the house. Do not do something outrageous. Simply break in and set her TV on the sofa or something, then leave. Something weird but quite harmless. So that night, I went to her residence and picked the lock. Everyone was asleep, and they didn't have an alarm, so I shone my phone flashlight and began moving their television. Unfortunately for me, it was simply too enormous a thing to handle while inebriated, and as I walked with it, I slipped and fell, crashing the TV on the ground and severely wounding my leg. Of course, her father came down when he noticed me. I could tell he was trying to keep himself from assaulting me. It did not work, however, and we got into a fight. However, the cops arrived and arrested me. Long story short, I pleaded guilty to all of the counts because my lawyer warned me that if I didn't, I could face much more than what I received. Apparently, there was no way I was ever going to win this case. I'm frightened about going to jail. I genuinely am, but I must acknowledge that I brought it on myself.